In this video, we are going to simplify a rational expression with opposite factors. Now, just looking at this, you may not recognize that we have opposite factors right off the top, but that's okay. As we get into it, I will point out what it means by opposite factors and what to do about that if you encounter this situation. Since I'm simplifying this rational expression, the first thing I want to do is completely factor and see if there are any common factors in the numerator and the denominator that I can divide out, in other words, cancel. So I'm going to bring my top trinomial, 2x squared plus 9x minus 35, over here to the side and factor it. I recognize that a, the coefficient on the x squared term, is not 1, it's 2. So I'm going to use the AC method. So I'm going to multiply a times c, which is negative 70. Now I'm looking for factors of negative 70 that add to make 9. So this may take a little bit of trial and error. Like I see negative 35 and 2, those are factors of negative 70, but that does not add to make 9. So just keep trying things. Eventually you'll get to the point where they're a little bit easier to recognize. But one thing I do see is that negative 5 times 14 is going to equal negative 70, and if I add them, they make 9. So yep, that meets the criteria. So those are my magic numbers, negative 5 and 14. So I'm going to take this 9 and split it into a 14x and a negative 5x. Now I switched the order here, but the order really doesn't matter. You could do either order. Now in these first two terms, I'm going to look for the greatest common factor, which would be 2x. And let's see what's left. Well, if I factor out a 2x, in other words, divide it out, I'm left with an x plus 7. In these next two terms, negative 5x minus 35, I'm going to factor out a negative 5 because that's my GCF. And because they're both negative, I'm going to factor out a negative, and that will make these both positive, x plus 7. Now this is cool because I've got common terms with both of these, or common factors, so I can factor that out, and I'm left with 2x from the first minus 5 from the second. So I have fully factored that numerator. So x plus 7 times 2x minus 5. Now I need to do the same thing for the denominator. So I'm going to switch colors and move over here. I want to factor 25 minus 4x squared. Now you might recognize that this is difference of two squares. I've got a perfect square, 25 is a perfect square, 4x squared is a perfect square, and it's a minus sign, so it's a difference. So I can go ahead and jump into my two binomials and put the square root of the first here, square root of 25 is 5, put the square root of the second here, square root of 4x squared is 2x, make one minus and one plus. Now you might notice when I put this in here that we have some terms that are pretty similar to each other, but they're not exactly the same. This is what it means when it says opposite factors. So if you look right here, 2x minus 5, that's pretty close to 5 minus 2x, right? But it's not exactly the same. Their signs are wrong. So these are what are called opposite factors. We can't cancel them out as they currently stand. Now, the way that we want to fix this issue is if we factor out a negative 1 from this factor that is the opposite factor, it's going to change its sign, right? So instead of a 5 minus 2x, it's going to be a negative 5 plus 2x. And then don't forget your other factor here. Now we don't typically write the negative 5 first, so let's go ahead and rewrite this. Addition's commutative, so we can switch them. So instead of negative 5 plus 2x, I'm going to write 2x minus 5. And then I'm going to write this one 2x plus 5. And now look, we have the same factors, 2x minus 5, 2x minus 5. So let's rewrite this whole thing. So in the bottom, I have a negative 1 times 2x minus 5 times 2x plus 5. And in the numerator, I have x plus 7 and 2x minus 5. So now, 2x minus 5. Now I have common terms that will divide out, in other words, cancel, and I have a much simpler expression now. In the numerator, I'll have x plus 7, and in the denominator, I have -1 times 2x plus 5. Now, it's sort of an optional step, but if you want, you could distribute that -1 and come up with -2x minus 5. So this would be my final simplified answer. Now, one thing to note is right here, if you recognize that this is in kind of an interesting format where we have 25 minus 4x squared, you could rewrite it as -4x squared plus 25 and factor out a -1 during that step, 4x squared minus 25. And you would eventually end up with this same answer. So, however, if you don't recognize, excuse me, if you don't recognize that in this step, that's okay. When you get to this step and you recognize that you have opposite factors, at that point you can say, oh, okay, I know what to do here. I'm going to factor out a -1, and then I will no longer have opposite factors.